Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and begin our service. I can't recall if this is the 8th or 9th online Zoom service, but I'm losing count and probably won't be able to count anymore. But welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning for the Gathering at Northern Hills live Zoom online Sunday service. And this morning's featured speaker is Michael Tacey, our guest or our music director. So every Thursday I send out, as you know, the link to the service as well as the Sunday program, which if you want to pull that up, I have to the side of your screen. You can follow along with the service. Also send out the announcement insert with a number of announcements. Some are repeated, some are new. I encourage you every week to take a look at these announcements, and I want to highlight just a few right now. Next Sunday, May 31st, Cheryl Lexon will facilitate a talkabout right here, live on Zoom. A talkabout for all in attendance with a discussion on a short TED Talk video about finding happiness. And that video TED Talk will be shown as a part of the service. It's very brief. It's about 8 minutes. And as I said, then Cheryl will lead a talkabout discussion of that topic. In 2 weeks' time, on Sunday, June 7th, after the service, I'll be speaking on that Sunday, but after the service, we will hold a mid-year congregation meeting, our first ever online. Sue Klein and Sean Harris and Suzanne Bjorner have been working very diligently to figure out all of the protocols for holding a mid-year meeting online. After a brief update from Treasurer Mark Mueller on our budget, we will then move to a vote on a bylaw change to allow for absentee or proxy voting or some version thereof. I know Suzanne and Suzanne Bjorner and Sue Klein are working on the wording of that bylaw change or amendment that will be sent well in advance for all to consider. If you have any questions about the bylaw or any comments about it, you are asked to please send your comments or thoughts to any of the board members. Exciting news that happened last week, and I want to repeat it, but new locks and our front entry keypad are now installed on our building. And so all previous keys to GNH front doors or entry doors and the office doors, those old keys will no longer work. 6-digit codes for every member or member family will soon be created and communicated to you from the office by Adrian. Look for those in the coming week or the week after. There's no immediate rush since the building is officially closed, but we'll get everyone their own unique code for either an individual or for a family. And if you will memorize that code and save it, that's important, but it's also important that you not share your code outside of your family. And if you do need to get into the building, until you get your own personal code, you should please contact Adrian in the office. She works Tuesdays and Thursdays from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., or you can contact Board President Sue Klein. I have an important and I think hopefully, I hope it's exciting announcement that in the next few days, Becky Wilson, who's the chair of our membership team, and I will be sending each member a list of about 12 other GNH members with whom you are asked to be a part of a support group. Becky and I have worked on dividing the congregation up into approximately 7 support groups, and the lists have been made, and we will be sending the lists out to each of you as an individual member with the names of those in your support group. And as the absence of an in-person church services will likely continue into the foreseeable future, it's important that all members feel connected and cared for. So we hope you'll email, text, call, or send cards to those in your support group. And Becky Wilson and I will also help convene some early evening Zoom video chats during the week for your group and for those in the group who wish to attend those. Now, as we all know, some of us have good, solid networks of friends and family with whom we can stay connected, but others of us don't have such networks. And Becky and I hope your group will be a source of ongoing support and friendship right now and long into the future, even after this COVID crisis has passed. So as I said, please be on the lookout for the list of your members, your group, support group members, and included with everyone's name is information on how each person can be contacted. And so please take part in this support network of which all in the congregation will be participating. Take part by reaching out to those in your support group. Now, as another announcement, in 3 weeks' time, the well-known and well-liked at GNH, Rabbi Robert Barr of Temple Beth Adam. He will once again guest speak to all of us gathering in Northern Hills. This time he will speak live and on Zoom. That will be Sunday, June 14th at 10:45 a.m. His topic will be religion. It doesn't need to be part of the problem. And as always, Rabbi Barr is a dynamic and fascinating speaker. And I know all of you will look forward to hearing that. And if you wish, and if you know friends or family who would like to hear Rabbi Barr, you are free to share the link, the Zoom link with them. And finally, I think Michael has some pictures he wants to queue up, but I want to thank the many people, the many members who responded to Lindsey Johnson's appeal to help spread mulch yesterday. We greatly appreciate all of your work, and apparently the beds at the church look beautiful. And so I really do thank all who showed up for that in very important and helpful work. Let's see now. I want to light the chalice, and I will light the chalice that I have here, but I'm going to show on the screen the words to the music, and Michael will play the music. So let us now light our chalice.
Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and glory. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and glory.
Thank you, Michael. And now is a time when for every service we have the prelude music. And this is a time to prepare your heart and mind for what you will experience this morning. Let's use this time to reflect or pray as you wish about concerns weighing on your mind, about loved ones in your heart, or about fears you may hold. Send your reflections during our prelude time or your prayers out into the universe as you listen to Michael's music. And if you wish, feel free to drop a prayer stone in a bowl of water. Let us now listen to Michael's prelude. Thank you, Michael. That was a beautiful piece and very appropriate for our prelude this morning. Now I want to introduce a joint singing together. Michael will play for us Spirit of Life. The lyrics will be displayed. I think all of us know this hymn by heart, but if you don't, the lyrics will be displayed. Let us join together in the singing Spirit of Life. Let us now join together in repeating our unison affirmation. I'm going to share the screen so you have the words. Let us please come together in the sharing of that. We seek to create a welcoming community that celebrates human diversity, encourages spiritual growth, fosters responsiveness to our world, and commits to the future of all children. Okay, thank you all. Right now, want to introduce our music director, Michael Tacey, who will be offering us the message this morning. The title of his message is A Skeptic's Guide to the Immortal Soul. Last Sunday, after the end of the service, Sue Klein and Suzanne Bjorner had a few announcements, and then I announced a recent development that has come to pass. As many of you know, Michael Tacey and I had proposed a new ministry plan for the congregation, but after some wonderful success for Michael in the realm of his teaching and tutoring business to music students, he has decided to pursue that occupation, that endeavor, that passion full-time. And I could not be happier for him. It is very successful and that is going well. Michael has decided not to pursue the new ministry plan that we have proposed. And so for now, things continue as normal. But when Michael sent out the email, the first thing that I went, oh no, because I thought perhaps Michael was indicating he was leaving us. But rest assured, Michael reassured me and the board that he loves GNH as much as we love him. And this morning we're privileged to hear from him as music director with what he has to say. Michael?
Thanks, Doug. Yeah, just real quick, you know, I'm happy to talk with anyone who wants to talk about it. You know, just know that it's not something that I took lightly, and it was not a decision that I made out of, you know, I told Doug it's not a decision that I made out of fear. It's one that I made out of love, and just know that it's, you know, it has nothing to do with me not wanting to help the congregation. You know, I'm still here. I just don't necessarily think that that's the right way for me to help right now. So anyway, I want to get into this message. Just so you know, I have everyone over here on this screen, and my message is over here, and my camera's over here. So if I'm like looking over here, that's what I'm looking at, you guys. So that might be kind of weird, but that's the way I've got it set up. I'm going to give the message today over Zoom, which means I'm pretty much going to spend this entire morning trying not to look at myself and being super self-conscious, because this feels really weird. It feels like I'm just talking to myself alone in this empty room. So forgive me if I seem really weird and uncomfortable. And also, my dog is in here and he's freaking out. So I apologize if the dog starts barking or something. So anyway, I'm just gonna get into this. I guess it's a little bit better knowing there's actually people. Last time I gave a message, I was just recording it because it was like when the pandemic first started. So there's actually people listening right now, so it's a little bit better. Anyway, when I was coming up with something to talk about for this Sunday service, I pretty much had one requirement, and it was that it not be about COVID or anything related at all to the pandemic. I'm sure by now everyone is sick to death of it, and I swear if I hear the phrase unprecedented times one more time, I think I might just lose it. I don't want to lose it. I very much want to keep it together. After all, May is supposed to be about mental health. It's supposed to be Mental Health Month, so I wanted to do something a little bit related to mental health. As I usually do, I also wanted to talk about something that may help us find a little bit of peace within ourselves, because I've said it a million times, I do believe that the key to achieving peace in the world is first to achieve peace within yourself. And yes, it may seem at first glance like my message has nothing to do with mental health, but it actually is related. So stick around, I guess, and you'll see what I mean. All right, so right around the time I was in college, I was in the height of what I would call a Gnostic atheist phase. In fact, I was kind of just Gnostic about everything in general back then. And just a quick explanation of what I mean, in case you don't know. Gnostic, spelled Gnostic. You may be familiar with the term agnostic, which has kind of been branded as a theological belief system with its own kind of set of beliefs. But really, it's originally it's just a word that means you're not sure that you're right. So you could be an agnostic atheist, which means you don't really believe in God, but you're open to the idea that, you know, maybe there is, I don't know. Or you could be a Gnostic theist, which means that you believe in God and you're wholly convinced that you're right. And anyone who disagrees with you is a heretic and a traitor. And when people say they're agnostic, what they usually mean is that they're just split right down the middle and they don't really consider themselves theists or atheists. And at the time, I definitely fell into the Gnostic atheist category. So I was convinced of the non-existence of God, and I was also convinced that I was right and theists were wrong. And perhaps if I had been born 10 to 20 years earlier than I had been, I would have been more discriminated against for my beliefs. But as it was, I really never faced much judgment for being an atheist. So this probably had to do with the fact that I tended to associate with open-minded people in general. And though most of my friends and family members were not really atheists, I never really had disagreements or anything more intense than like a polite discussion about our differing beliefs, except for one time when I was in college and I got into a discussion with a good friend of mine about being atheist. She's not an atheist at all, in fact, a devout Christian, but we always agreed that certain truths about human decency and love and kindness are more important than the semantics of religious texts. So we've remained friends for many years from the time we were just children. As we had in the past, we began discussing our beliefs late one night, both casually trying to convince the other that they're wrong, to absolutely no avail, as we had done 100 times before, until she asked me a question that I surprisingly had never been asked before. She asked me, so if you don't believe in God or anything supernatural at all, do you believe in a soul? And like I said, I'd never been asked that before, so I wasn't really sure how to respond, but I considered for a moment and I kind of was like, I guess I don't. No, I don't really believe in a soul. And I got a new reaction out of her after saying this. She was actually upset. She was actually hurt when I said that, as if my words had done personal emotional damage to her. And she was kind of like, that's taking a little bit far, don't you think? And her face was stricken with disbelief. I mean, you have to believe that you have a soul, she said. You're essentially calling yourself and me soulless. It was actually kind of a point of contention between me and her, who's one of my closest and oldest friends, for a pretty long while after that. And at the time, I was kind of indignant about it because I was like I was a dumb kid. I mean, I was just like, why would she get so upset about that? It has nothing to do with her. It's not personal. Why is saying you don't believe in God okay? But as soon as I say I don't believe in a soul, suddenly she gets really offended. I didn't get it. And what I found over time was that she wasn't the only one that had this kind of reaction. When I told people about this interaction, expecting them to say, oh yeah, she's being ridiculous, it's no big deal. Instead, I got similar reactions as to hers. Even some people who themselves said they were kind of atheist, they would say, well, it's kind of rude. That's kind of, that's not really a great thing to say. And I was kind of lost because a lot of times I tend to be a really rational person, and I didn't really understand why it was a really big deal. And that's a fault of mine. I tend to be over logical, overly rational a lot of times. And I just didn't get why it was somehow more meaningful and personal than a person's belief in God. because that's supposed to be the ultimate highest power. Saying that I didn't believe in an immortal soul, yet somehow had the power to deeply wound someone on an individual level. I didn't want to hurt anybody, so I kind of attacked it the way I normally do. I set out to kind of gain a logical, rational understanding of the immortal soul in hopes to relate a little bit, empathize. I didn't necessarily believe in it, but if I learned, I could empathize with someone's need to believe in it. If I understood it better, at least that was what I was going for. And so for a long time, I read about this and I looked up different stuff. And let me tell you, there are lots and lots of different interpretations about what a soul is. I'm sure everyone knows this. Whether it is truly immortal, whether it's morally perfect, without sin, whether it can be destroyed, lost, or otherwise damaged. And the traditional Christian belief is that the body and soul exist independently, but are essentially just correlated to one another. The body is made of simple matter, and so like everything else in the universe, it will eventually be gone. But once a body is lost, the soul which once shared that body continues to live on, not in a plane that our eyes, ears, or noses can detect. It exists in a sort of celestial plane that is not made of matter, but rather something more permanent and potent that cannot be destroyed by the mere passage of time or decay or disease. The problem that I had with this traditional view of the Christian soul is that it is uniquely and why can I not say that word? It's uniquely and irrevocably tied to one identity. The identity of that body it once inhabited. According to the Bible, God creates a new, unique soul for every new person that is born. And not only is that soul forever tied to that name, that identity, but it's also judged for the very mortal and imperfect, those human choices that body makes. Upon the death of a person's body in the Christian faith, a soul is basically judged depending on the actions that body took in life, and then bestowed a fitting afterlife based on those actions. Obviously, there's a little more to it than that. There's intricacies in different kinds of faiths, but that's the gist of it. To me, this seems really oddly shallow and kind of impersonal. Isn't it rather materialistic? A person's actions while spending their life on earth are so dependent on their surroundings and their situation. It would be much easier for someone with ready access to food, water, and housing and healthcare to make ethical choices defined by the Christian Bible, because humans are limited by earthly needs. Scientifically speaking, we are just apes. We need to eat, we need to breathe, we need interaction, care, and love like any other animal. And when we're denied those things, it's just harder to control our actions. So I just didn't think it was really fair to judge someone for all eternity based on the short events that just transpired in the one tiny lifetime. It's such a blip. So maybe instead you would choose something more like the Hindu model of the soul, which is simple. There's kind of a lot of faiths that are like this. In Hindu, it's more aptly named the self or Atman. And in the Hindu belief, all souls or Atman are nameless, they're formless, invisible, eternal, indistinguishable, invulnerable, and infinite. Only when they are bound to nature in some way do they start to develop characteristics that can actually be distinguished one from another. The Hindus believe that souls are gradually pulled into nature over time and bound to one instance of nature. Could be a tree or a fish or whatever. There are many different beliefs on why and how this happens, not just in Hindu culture, but in a lot of faiths. But Basically, the soul gradually forgets its original state and starts to develop more mortal features and traits like desires or fear, shame, things like that. The souls become completely engulfed by nature, and their consciousness becomes tied to that instance of nature. It becomes cluttered with earthly needs. They interact with other elements of nature and ultimately develop a kind of karmic record. Every interaction, no matter how small or large, is tallied by a separate force, and then whatever happens to that soul is influenced by its karma. So that's kind of their version of that justice system. Similar to the Christian faith, they have a kind of justice system. It's almost like the utility of the soul is to have some kind of balance. But the important distinction here is that this soul evolves over millions and billions of years, traveling from one instance of nature to the next, remembering and forgetting its true form over and over and over and over again. And slowly but surely, it brings balance to the universe through karma. And from a purely utilitarian standpoint, I always thought that this model makes a little bit more sense. To me, it's just a better way to judge a soul and bring some justice to the world. If karma really does work the way the Hindus believe, then that means eventually the universe will truly be at peace. And that's kind of a comforting thought. But it still really doesn't help to explain to me why someone would have this deep kind of personal attachment to this idea of a self or a soul or an Atman, whatever you want to call it. After all, the Buddhist belief in karma is similar in a lot of ways to the Hindus in the sense that they believe in that kind of cosmic justice system, a natural balancing, rebalancing, that kind of thing. But they also believe in a complete and total impermanence, which extends even to the existence of the soul. In short, nothing is permanent, absolutely nothing, and therefore souls cannot possibly exist. So this justice handed down from on high, the celestial Supreme Court, if you will, it can exist even when souls do not. So what's the point of a soul? If we don't need a soul to dole out heavenly sentences and punish wrongdoers, reward the righteous, then why is it undeniably a crucial element of most belief systems? And why is it that so many people felt attacked when I casually denied the existence of a soul? Well, my problem, like I said before, and as it often is, was trying to analyze this issue from a kind of practical use standpoint. Though this concept is often co-opted and used as a means by which to judge beings worthy or punish them, I believe that the idea of a soul actually originally comes from something much more personal, intimate, and kind of intangible. And now, just as a disclaimer, what I say from this point out, it's not based on facts or texts, it's purely conjecture. There's no proof to corroborate what I'm saying, because I'm talking about a time before humans knew how to write or communicate in any way. I'm talking about spirituality before religion really existed, before there was any record of it. I believe that really, really early on in human cultures, we developed the religion, the spirituality right around the times that humans started performing death rituals. There's a little bit of evidence that humans started burying other humans in a sort of ceremonial way, really a long time ago, tens of thousands of years ago. And this is proof of an understanding of death and loss in a way that no other animal, as far as we know, in history has ever achieved. Humans had developed a brain that was capable of understanding a very abstract and strange, difficult concept. That person is gone, but something of them still remains, and they wanted to honor that. Whatever it is that still remains of that person is honestly, in my opinion, just semantics. You could say that their soul still exists and it ascended to heaven or the celestial plane. You could say that their actions left a karmic imprint on their Atman. Or you could just say that their memory will live on in those who they touched throughout their lives. And thus they would create a ripple to every person that person touched in turn. The point is, that person was important to someone else, and it's simply too painful to just say they're gone forever, and that's it. The existence of a soul is way more important than something as impersonal as the rules and regulations of a religion, and even more important than your belief in God, or whether God exists at all. A soul connects you to those you lost, loved ones. It helps you grieve, and it helps you move on. And it helps you be okay with one of the most difficult concepts we face as humans, and that is our inevitable fate that we will one day die. I didn't really understand this on a personal level until I lost someone very close to me. There he is. There's my dog. The first death I had of my life that had a very severe impact on me was the death of my grandmother on my mother's side, who we called Mimi. And she had been like a third mother to me. I have a mom and a stepmom, and I had Mimi. She lived with us from the time I was just a baby, and she was around constantly as a caretaker because my parents had to work long hours during our childhood. And when she got sick in the later years of college, and I realized she was going to be gone soon, I found myself wishing so bad that I believed in God or heaven or anything to give me some comfort that she wouldn't just be gone when she was gone. But I couldn't do it. So instead, I ended up kind of forming my own little soul belief without even really meaning to. Instead, I just told myself that everything she did, every person she affected, every word she spoke affected the world and the people around her. They would not be the things, the places, and the people that they are without her presence in the world. And that collective body of effects caused by the imprint of her life exists as kind of her eternal mark on the world, on the universe. And in that sense, she can kind of live on forever in the echoes of those things she reached, those things she touched. At the time, I really didn't consider it a spiritual revelation. I was too logical and concerned with reason and utility. But now I understand that that's really the definition of spirituality and really a personal belief system. One which, funnily enough, I derived largely from Mimi's own beliefs, who was somewhat of a loosely spiritual person, but not religious at all by the traditional use of the word. In later years, I came to understand the importance of this simultaneous existence of permanence and impermanence in a person's life. And it brings me a lot of peace and freedom. So many people are terrified of death. And I think I was too. I'm not terrified. I wouldn't say I'm totally unafraid of death entirely. I think that my own personal belief in a soul, though, helps me come to terms and deal with that fear in a much more healthy way than simply denying it and just saying, well, once I'm gone, I'm just gone. And yes, I've since talked with my friend, and I shared with her this evolution of my belief in the soul, I guess you could call it. I don't really know what I would call it. And I think that my understanding of a soul is different than hers, but I also think that that is inherently what is so special about the idea of a soul. And that is that the nature of their existence is completely unique to each person. And I understand now why she got so upset that I didn't believe in the soul. In a sense, I was denying that she and everyone else in the world doesn't cease to exist the moment that they die. And I think that is really at the heart of what gives people that fear of death. I don't think that people are really afraid of death. I think that they're afraid that there's going to be no purpose. There's going to be no point to anything that they've done or that they do. And I just want to say that that is just simply not true. Your imprint on the world, no matter how small or big, it doesn't matter. Everything that you've done, the imprint that you've made, will live on forever. And to me, that is what it means to have a soul. So thank you everyone for listening. And I'm now going to move into a time of talk back where I welcome your comments or suggestions. You know the drill. I think Doug is going to have people, Doug, you want people to chat and then we open up the mic, or?
Chat or wave their hand. I'll try and take a look, and you help me out here too, Michael.
Okay. I think Tom Lotman. Tom?
Yeah, Michael, thank you so much. That was a very deep, reflective thought that mirrors a lot of my thinking over many, many years. I do believe that there are two conflicting motives for religion. One is an agentic motivation of, how do I create an individuality and keep it? And the other is communal, where at the core of spiritual growth is connection. And I think that the agentic motive is one that helps us cope with a real existential dread. And the idea of a soul, the idea of self, is all a construct that we do, and we hold on to that very tightly. But I think true spiritual development for me is at the core is connection. And spiritual growth is a process of letting go, letting be, and letting in. Letting go of this tie to this sense of an individual soul or self, letting be of things in the world that feel negative and awful, like this pandemic. But then letting in is the primary spiritual growth. It's being open to otherness, being open to connections, whether it's to people, whether it's to ideas, whether it's to things that are transcendent and beyond my knowing. So for me, spiritual development is a process of letting go of the idea of soul and letting in the idea of just being connected to something that we don't understand, we can't understand, but we're really compelled to be open to more and more connection, and that's what spiritual development is. So Michael, thank you. You made me think a lot. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom. Those are really, yeah, that's a beautiful thought. I like that a lot. And I think you've spoken to that before. You've come to church and talked about that concept. Yeah, very interesting. I really like that. Thanks, Tom. Brad?
Brad, do you have something to say?
Yes, I did. Yeah, thank you. I didn't know if we were supposed to raise our hand or something. You know, Mike, it was really interesting hearing you talk, and the thing that jumped into my mind is, as you talked about your friend, your Christian friend, and what the soul meant to her, and the construct that you created, which resonates a lot with me. And as I think about other ones, a lot of times we forget there is a reality we live in. And everybody has a different way to describe that. And so there's competing views of how you describe that, but everybody's describing the same reality, right? And so, you know, your friend was describing it through the construct of Christianity and the traditional soul. You're describing it through the impact people leave on those around them. I tend to think of it in terms of, I don't know, the common energies or themes that permeate everything around us. But a lot of times we do forget, you know, we're describing them in different ways, but it's the same thing. Just as if I speak to you in French or Chinese or Spanish or something like that, they're just different languages, but you're talking about the same thing. And
Right.
so, you know, for me, that's like the important point that you brought, you know, more highlighted in my mind from this. So thanks. It was stimulating.
Yeah, what you were just saying really reminded me of kind of that concept of, you know, there being many paths up the mountaintop, right? But they eventually all lead to the summit. You know what I mean? So yeah, we're all getting to the same place. We're just describing it a different way. Yeah, thanks, Brad.
Other thoughts or comments? Well, Michael, for me, as I echo a bit of what Tom Lotman and Brad just said, that you caused me to think a lot about this topic and to ponder, well, what is the soul and what is my soul, if there is one?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's where I think as Unitarian Universalists, we have an advantage that for every single one of us, we can ponder that topic and perhaps come to our own conclusions about what the soul means to each of us. And that's part of charting each of our own paths in terms of spirituality. And you raised a great topic, I think, that is useful for every one of us to reflect on and ponder and meditate. So thank you.
Thank you.
Somebody else has? Sue Sale.
Hold on, Sue. Hold on,
When
Sue.
I was very young.
Uh,
I am muted. I've got to do what?
Okay, you're good now. Can you?
You can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I was very young and my friends were all talking about heaven and what all, my father had said it, that it's like throwing a pebble in a pond and the ripples go out, and the people you have the most impact on are how you live on. And through the years, I've kind of held on to that. But the other thing is, I firmly believe spirituality, religion was constructed in people's minds to help them get through the really, really hard times. And when my father died, all I could think of was, I wish I could believe there was a heaven and he was still alive. You know, I wish I could believe it, but I couldn't. Just like you couldn't believe, you know, when you started off the soul.
Yeah.
But I do know that where we came from, what I got out of it was what his rendition was, the people that he impacted really is the way he lives on, in my mind. But it's much easier conceptually or to make you feel good if there's pearly gates and he's living happily ever after and looking down on me and whatever.
Yes.
But I have trouble with that.
Hey, Suzanne.
Yeah.
The Jewish religion believes you're alive is still, well, you exist as long as somebody says your name.
Yeah.
When they no longer say your name, you're gone.
Right.
I knew that it hit you, Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your eclectic background.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something, I forget what the saying is, but the Jewish saying is something about, so long as someone tells your story, you live.
Yeah.
And when they quit telling your story, you're gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks, Sue. Yeah. I know. I've talked to this with Sue and Tim a lot before, and I think we have very, very similar beliefs in that sense. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Lindsay?
You're unmuted, Lindsay.
Oh, I'm unmuted. Okay, thanks. One of the things that really struck me in terms of both your conversation, your service today, Michael, but also was recently reading about the zoo, which is both the zoo and the botanical gardens, kind of cutting a lot of their beautiful flowers and taking them around town to nursing homes and hospitals and all kinds of things to kind of spread the joy. And, I was thinking that a lot of what you were talking about, Michael, had a lot to do with, if you don't, that old saying, if you have a penny, give it away. And that really, whether it's a soul or a being, or whether it's a legacy, one of the things that brings the most value for any part of you, whether you're dead or alive, is having it shared. And I think that's also true of, something like the zoo, where what makes people enjoy it is when they see it and when they think about it and when they are there to be a part of it. And when you can find some other way to share it and spread that message by giving the flowers away or things like that, you really have not only helped yourself, but then everyone around you.
Right.
And the whole sense of soul, in my mind, I think resonates most clearly for me in sharing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's, once again, creating those ripples, affecting those around you. Yeah, I think that's hugely important. Yeah. And it also ties in with Tom, what Tom was saying, connecting to something greater than yourself. So, yeah, I think. And it connects with what Brad was saying. We're all describing the same thing in a different way. Nice way to connect it all there, Lindsay.
Okay, I don't see anybody else raising their hand. Oh, okay, Richard.
Mike, I just want to thank you. That was a very helpful conversation that you engaged us in. And you helped me understand the soul in a lot of new ways. And thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that.
That's high praise. Thank you, Richard. One last chance. Anyone? Okay. Michael is now going to play for us music, Where the Soul Meets the Body by Death Cab for Cutie. And this is our time of offering. For those of you who are visitors here to this service this morning, just ignore my plea. The gift of your presence this morning is a gift enough. But for those of us who consider the gathering in Northern Hills our spiritual home, this is our time when we can give back to the work we do. If while Michael is playing the music, if you have an opportunity to get out your checkbook and write it and put it in an envelope and send it into church, that would be wonderful. I'm excited to say that by this time next week, Sue Klein, who's been working very diligently on getting us a online donating platform, will have that up for all of you, and Sue will announce the details later this week or else next Sunday, but you'll be able to text your entire bank account to the church if you wish. Hopefully not, but we do thank Sue for that. And let us now go into our time of offering with music performed by Michael, Where the Soul Meets the Body. Thank you, Michael. I'd not heard that song before. That's very beautiful. Now is our time for sharing joys and sorrows. If you would like to please now use your chat option and send a joy or sorrow for all to read and then for me to announce, please do so at this time. Anything on your heart or mind, joyful or of a concern that you would like to share with all members here this morning, please do so. from Brad Barron and Kimberly Tanai. We have we have adopted out our first foster puppies and have a new foster dog. That's from Brad and Kimberly and Lucas. Congratulations. That is a joy. Lindsay, I'll unmute you.
I have a joy, and unfortunately you can't see it today because you're all in your houses and not at the church. But yet, on the heels of some really yeoman's work by Ann Bobinick and Sally and Marcia and Ann McCracken, who had done lots and lots of work, particularly tending that front area and kind of generally trying to keep the weeds at bay. We had just an amazing turnout yesterday of both Troop 674, who donates the mulch to us, as well as a number of church families. And all the Kozaks were there. Jennifer Schmal and her kids were there. All the Wernicke's were there. Dave Hester was there. Michael Tacey was there. Who else am I? Oh, Ralph and Katie were there. It was a packed house. And I have to tell you, even just getting enough projects for everyone to do because they had so much energy, it was awesome. And Michael was an amazing co-host with me, and Nicole was there too, my niece. But we really, you would hardly recognize that the entire pile of mulch is gone. They weeded mountains and mountains and mountains of stuff, and they got the playground equipment weeded under and mulched under so that the kids can enjoy it again. And despite the fact that it's sinking into the ground, they were able to shorten a couple of the things, at least, so they're still usable again. And they got the fountain going again, and we cut down a lot of volunteer trees that had become quite substantive. And there was a lot of extra weeding done. So I hope you all have a chance to at least drive by and see it and know that it was done with love, and we sure appreciate all the kids from, there were 6 of the big scouts from Troop 674, because they're not supposed to really do activities. So Ian recruited all of his Eagle Scout group, and off they went. So they were incredibly diligent, and they worked hard, and we were there from basically 9 to 1. But it was an amazing day, and I really appreciated everyone making that extra effort. And it's not done, but if you have time and you're ready to come back for another project, I still have a list.
Thank you, Lindsay. That is a joy for the entire congregation. Thank you to all who worked yesterday. Ralph and Carol, do you have something you want to say? No. Okay. Anyone else for the joy or sorrow? Okay. Thank you all. With that, we will now conclude out our service with our second hymn to sing together. Michael will perform for us, Wake Now, My Senses.
Wake now, my senses, and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being and all. Keep with the web of creation your row. Giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now, my reason, reach out to the blue. Join with deny. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole human race. Wake now my vision of ministry clear. Rise in my pathway with radiance here. Bring all my glory with all who will share. Work towards a planet transformed by our care.
Thank you, Michael. As we leave the spiritual portion of our time together this morning, we all acknowledge the joys in our lives, the many things we have to be grateful for. But as the song that we just sang together indicated, there is suffering and hurt in the world, not just from the COVID crisis, but from many other things that have endured since time began, that of hate and discrimination and bigotry and poverty. Let us, as a result, keep both our gratitude in our hearts, but also the existence of suffering in the world. And may we each be forces of empathy and love to everyone. I wish you all much peace and joy on behalf of Michael and myself. Thank you for being here. And if you wish to stick around and grab a cup of coffee and join together in some breakout sessions of chatting and sharing, we will be doing that shortly. Thank you all once again for being here.